Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at?
On that rooftop. Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in here,
We're east of the riverbed, and we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
All right, today's episode, we're blessed to have retired Army Command Sergeant Major Tom Satterly. Tom is a very well-known and highly regarded combat leader. Tom served 25 years in the U.S. Army, 20 of which are with Delta Force. Tom has extensive combat experience, precisely the kind of person we want to have on this podcast to share his experience and insights and advice with young warriors. Tom has recently published a best-selling book, and Tom and his wife Jen actually have done quite a bit and still do quite a bit for veterans and their families. So with that, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me on. Anytime we can get the word out and share experiences with people, we're only helping people do that. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, we've already spoken. The intent of the podcast, this episode, and all of the episodes, is to share experiences and produce content that you and I would have liked to listen to as young corporals, yet to see any kind of pressure under fire. So with that, I always ask guests to give us a quick 60-minute executive summary of something about Tom Satterly that may not be on your website, brought up, hobbies, sports played, anything you think that could add flavor to your official bio that we already know about.
Wow. Yeah, we're pretty open on our side about everything I've done, almost to my dismay at times, but that's what gets people to understand how we feel. What's not on my website is, I spent a lot of years struggling with how to be a good leader, how to make those right decisions, and would I make those right decisions, and always worried about it until it finally came to happen, and I had to make those decisions. And each and every time is a fear. And I guess that's what's not really on our website, and maybe not in the book if it's not laid out as much, as the fear that goes along with making decisions that affect other people. That's always been a tough thing to do, and that's not on our website. Things about what I do, I've made my hobby, other than keeping up the house and the yard, which kind of passes the time, for me, is to help other people and share our experiences. Both my wife and I have made that our hobby. Now we relax in different ways by going for long walks in the woods and taking time off and be alone, but we're kind of energized by the work that we do. And so it's more than just work. It's fun for us. So it kind of is our hobby, and it's what we do 7 days a week. We don't take a day off unless we set our phones down. Like yesterday, we set our phones down for a day. We're going to do date day, date night. And our operations guy started calling me towards the end of Sunday. And that means something like, hey, and he starts texting, and then he's calling my wife. And I'm like, I text back. I'm like, I hope this is important, even though you said it was important, but this is date night, and we really need this, because this one thing I'll tell people you need is to take time for yourself, and we rarely do. And he's like, oh, it's about a podcast. I want to get you on tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is there another time we can do this? Because our new guy's fresh out of it. He's still in the Air Force, actually, Special Operations. He's getting out very soon. And it reminds me of that attitude, that motivation, that head down and drive 7 days a week. And we teach him when to shut down and put your phone down and relax a little bit. That's not anywhere on any site or social media that we put out, that we do need to take time for ourselves. And that's something that you need to teach people to do, is to relax and enjoy life and recharge yourself before you can drive on and put your head down and absorb other people's problems, which is kind of what we do for a living.
Yeah, interesting. That's a great tip, not only for leaders, but I think in the business world, it's one of the first things as an executive coach that I try to talk to people about is, eventually the well's going to run dry, and it's an endurance event, not a sprint.
Right.
You can't sprint a marathon. I don't care who you are,
And when you get out, you try to equate everything to money. Like, well, I didn't make a lot of money and I worked hard. So if I'm making a little more money, they work twice as hard.
Yeah.
And then they're working twice as hard next to their civilian counterparts who are like, what are you doing? You need to relax a little bit. We work by the hour here, so it's hard to get into that attitude and mentality of relax and slow down a little bit.
No doubt. Well, back to combat leadership, Tom, if you were limited to 2 or 3 sentences right at the front of the podcast, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's combat leadership to you? What's your philosophy on combat leadership? Just 2, 3, 4 sentences, quick blurb up front.
Combat leadership philosophies on that is all begins in training. You won't know what you're going to do in combat until you get there. You need to know that it's people first. You need to take care of people first. People say mission first, people always, but you can't do a mission without people. So people are first. And don't be afraid to make decisions. You're going to make decisions, right or wrong, but make a decision. People get stuck in that decision-making process and they never make a decision. And that's worse than making a bad decision at times, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. As an executive coach, I claim that I can teach anybody to be a leader. And I'm sure you agree with that. And in fact, I say that I can take anybody with the desire and actually make them a world-class leader in the business world because it is a learned skill. I'm curious if you think that anyone with the desire can be developed into an effective combat leader. Not necessarily world-class, Audie Murphy, but can we make people, the youngsters out there listening to this, can they become effective combat leaders?
Yeah, I think so. And we'd be doing a disservice to everybody if we said no, because you'd miss out on a lot of people who didn't try. Now, would your leaders be better? Probably, because those who don't care and try anyway are a different type of person, and those are what you want. But anybody can be taught to be a leader if they have what you pointed out is the desire. Yeah. It takes work. It takes commitment. It takes the ability to not feel loved and wanted and needed. You have to get past that because you have to make those decisions. But I think you can teach anybody with desire and commitment to be an effective leader. Yeah,
good. I agree with that. And before we get rolling, I left this out of a few podcasts, and now I'm doing it up front. Are there, I had mentors and people that I really owe my Marine career to, and I'm sure you do. Is there anyone up front that you wanted to mention in particular that had a really profound effect on you as a young guy, or even as a senior NCO? Is there anyone that really stands out that you'd like to thank for the attention they paid you?
Yeah, as a younger guy, one of my friends that ended up eventually being my team leader for a short while was Tony Copper. He gave me that drive and attitude and that competition. He always would, if he wasn't our team leader, he'd knock on the door. Hey, you want to go run an O course? Sure. All right, let's make it both O courses. I'm like, hey, all right, and then he'd pull in his protective mask with this on and would go do it. And he just kept pushing and pushing. He was across the street from us in Somalia on 3 October and, giving a good fight. And another one would be Scotty Miller, who is still in the military now. And his first mission was also with us in Somalia, but we had Ben Sakalik as our leader for all of our missions until 3 October. His father died, so he had to fly home. And then 3 October mission pops, and Scotty Miller's in there. And I remember getting in this huge firefight, fighting our way to the crash site finally. We got in the house and things calmed down for a minute. And I remember him asking, is it always like this? I started laughing. I said, no, it's not. This is completely different. And I don't like it either. But growing up through the years, he was a guy that showed you calmness, showed you thought process and decision-making, and also what a beast could be like. But he always led with love and a soothing kind of thought process before he answered your questions. It always kind of was calming to me.
Yeah. Tom, you've mentioned that it all goes back to training. Is there any real difference? Some say there's no such thing as combat leadership. It's leadership. I have my own opinion on it. I'm curious to see what yours is. Difference between combat leadership and just military leadership in general?
I think leadership evolves into combat leadership when it has to. I think that leadership means making sure that people under you know how to do their job. They know how to do it well. They know how to do it under stress and pressure when they're tired. And that is combat leadership. Right? You go to combat and people are shooting at you. So you're training to be a leader. You should make sure your training is as realistic in every way as possible. And the only difference would be the bullets coming at you. You know, you don't know who they're coming from or where. And that is when you know that you're so well trained that you rely on muscle memory to do your job for you. And that's what I say training, because you're not going to go to combat and do something different. You're going to go to combat and do exactly what you've done every time in training. Muscle memory kicks in under fear and pressure. And so if you haven't done it over and over again, you're not going to do it in combat for the first time. It doesn't just wake you up and you're, oh, this is real. Let's do it for real now. You know, we used to complain about staying up all night. Hold on. Yeah, but guys used to complain about staying up all night. And, you know, well, we have to practice to suck and we have to practice to do this when, well, if you don't practice it in combat, you're going to fall asleep. You're not going to have tested yourself. You didn't do it while you're hungry or thirsty and tired and so down that everything is muscle memory. You no longer think. And plus muscle memory gives you the ability to think of other things while you're executing those skills that you were taught. And that helps keep you alive. And I think that's what combat leadership is being the effective leader from start to finish, ensuring your men are so well trained that they do what you want them to do without even thinking about it. Yeah,
excellent. Right along those lines, you know, combat leaders, as you know, come in all shapes and sizes. And you know, countless people have told me, it's been in my minimal experience, it's been my experience that sometimes the guys that you think are going to be Conan the Barbarian really aren't. And then you get under fire and you're like, where the hell did this guy come from? You know, the guy just blossoms. So you really can't go off of appearance and maybe even past resume. In your experience, any characteristics or traits come off the top of your head about, you know, the best combat leaders that you see across the board typically always do A, B, and C and act D, E, and F, you know, any common things?
You know, you throw out courage, but everybody talks about courage. When I talk about courage, I talk about courage to admit that you're wrong, courage to admit that you're not perfect and you're going to make bad decisions and you're going to fail along the way. I haven't met anyone who hasn't failed. So I would want people that understand they're going to fail and they're going to make decisions anyway. I want people who under tough times can stand up and not scream at the other people and lead with fear, but lead with love. And understand what those people are going through and be able to reach individual people. You don't always have time to do that. You can only reach, say, your troop or your team or your squadron. But that's when they carry themselves. That's when you know your training comes together, when every individual carries himself and does their individual parts, and that's what makes the team. I think candor, being honest, being openly honest, but that also means with yourself. That doesn't mean telling somebody they're screwed up. That means, hey, I screwed up, we screwed up. You know, we're all going to make mistakes and it's okay. And giving people the ability to make mistakes, which gives them the ability to try new things and reach out and be committed, fully committed. And competence comes through your training. If you're continually training over and over again, I think people don't go into combat with fear and obsess about it. They obsess about doing their job right, which is a good thing, right? You focus on doing your job well, not to the point that it paralyzes you, but I was always under the impression I wasn't good enough. So I tried harder and harder and harder. And I thought it was always just me. And I found out that most of the people I work with didn't feel good enough around who they worked with. So they tried harder and harder, which, you know, A, made them a better person at what they did, but B, destroyed them internally because they never felt good enough. So you got to have that honesty that you're not perfect, you're going to make mistakes, and that your men are going to make mistakes, and to treat them all fairly. So I'd say the typical military courage, candor, competence, and commitment, you know, I kind of throw that in paragraphs there, but You have to have that honesty, that self-honesty with everybody, and get personal with your people. It's not all about just at work. Get personal about their home lives. So when they do show up at work, you'll understand what's bothering them.
Yeah. You've mentioned training and then the anecdote about staying up all night. It's a great segue into our next topic is of discipline. And we're talking about the kind of discipline that enables individuals to succeed in combat, whether they be the PFC or the lieutenant. You had the benefit, Tom, of being a conventional soldier before you went into the soft world. And so I'm sure you were exposed to what, many people call the chicken shit Army stuff, the inspections and spit shine boots and all of that. And, it's my belief or my impression that a lot, we haven't, though there are still deployments out there for conventional forces, the military is running out of combat experience in conventional units with the younger guys. So just like you did, and just like I did, when I was a young enlisted Marine, a lot of the younger folks are really chafing at this. My older brother came in and he deployed 6 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. He told me he didn't have to put up with any of this crap. And all I do is field exercises and, barracks inspections and all of that. Love to hear your thoughts on what really is discipline in combat. And does all of the soldierly stuff, some would call the chicken shit stuff, does it play any role? Does it have any value in developing discipline in a soldier that applies in combat?
Yeah, definitely. I felt the same way growing up. I thought, why do I need a haircut? Why do I have to shave? Why do I have to do this and that? Why do and physical fitness, sure. Why do I have to deal with a group of people? There was all those complaints. And when you're a young soldier, young airman, Marine, you don't understand that every minute detail and how you attack it and how you address it tells your leader something about you. Do you get a haircut on time, or do I have to tell you to get a haircut all the time? Do you make your bed? Do you clean your room? All those stupid things. Do you do your job like you're supposed to, or do I have to check on you? I don't want somebody I have to keep telling to do that. I don't want somebody that's going to have to complain every day about, why do we have to get a haircut? Well, number one, you better be a good follower before you ever try to be a good leader. You have to understand what following is all about. You have to understand what it's like and what it puts a leader through to not follow. And then you also have to do the extra work of, why do we get haircuts? Well, pick up a book and read it. The military gives you books on everything. That's one of the easiest things to do if you don't know your job or the why of something. And I'm a big person on why, right? I'm a big person because if you're teaching something, you better know why, because you can explain it in any circumstance. When somebody tries to take your opinion and tear it down, if you have the why, you can at least speak to why you're doing what you do, and most people can't. And that puts them, so if you want to bundle it all up, I would say that all of those disciplines of following orders are really going to mean something in combat. If you can't follow a simple order like cut your hair, clean your room, or show up on time for a formation, how can I ever rely on you to do something in combat when you're terrified and you really don't want to do it? Not just the fact that you don't agree with it, but no, I don't really want to run out there and rush that bunker. I don't. Who wants to do that, right? But if you have that mindset of always being do what you're told to do when you're told to do it, you'll do that. It's muscle memory, and it matters in combat. So everything you do in the military is either for combat or to support those soldiers that go to combat. And everything matters. You have to have discipline, order, leadership. You have to follow. And if not, things start to break down. And you see it in organizations all around the world. When people start complaining, then it starts to grow. More people complain. Next thing you know, there's this whole attitude of, why do we have to do this? And nobody really understands why. And then productivity starts to drop off, and morale starts to break down. And then the leaders can't even figure out what's going on, other than the fact that, guys don't like to cut their hair all the time. Or they don't like to shave, or they want a full beard. Well, maybe it's because of the pro mask. Maybe it's because they just want you to follow orders. I mean, if you can't be a follower, you definitely aren't going to be a good leader.
Yeah, interesting. You've already touched on fear, and it's you've got the outline, and we're going to touch on fear and uncertainty. And I think it's the universal question. You've already mentioned it a bit, Tom. Is I had it. I think everybody has it. I think you'd be crazy not to have it. I think everybody wonders, when my first combat action takes place, am I going to be able to overcome fear and do my job. And I personally, I never really was afraid of getting killed before I had any combat experience. I was mortally in fear, mortified of being judged as incapable or not part of the team. So right from the start, even before I was a leader, I was always in fear that I'd let the team down. I know you had this question before your first combat action for years, I'm sure. What do you think about that question? What did you think before and then after combat? What do you tell the guys that have that question in their frontal lobe right now?
I think before we go to combat, that question sparks a lot of curiosity inside ourselves. And we answer that with bravado. Oh, I'm going to destroy the enemy. I'm going to kick their ass. I'm going to do this and that. And it's like, are you? I mean, nobody knows how you're going to handle a bullet coming at you or somebody running at you with a rifle or a knife or a suicide vest or a vehicle driving down the street shooting at you or multiple vehicles and surrounding you for 18 hours. I mean, we were surrounded Somalia for 18 hours. I went through a myriad of emotions. I went from, payback to fear to terrified to, I'm going to die. So let's just kill as many people as we can and save as many of our own as I can. Knowing your job, and there's two kinds of people, two that worry, one like you and me, I want to do a good job. I don't want to let my men down. That was my fear. It wasn't of dying. It wasn't of being shot. I really never considered it because I don't think most people do consider it. A lot of us wouldn't do what we do if we thought, well, I'm going to die, so let's just do this. We kind of throw in that mental block of not me, right? Not going to happen to me. I'm just going to run in there and do it. And hopefully your training takes over. So I focused on the training. I always focused on the training. That's how I kept morale up. That's how I kept spirits up of people. That's how I kept people alive. And that's how I dealt with injuries and death. More training. I just looked inside myself and thought, what is it when people got killed, or what is it when I was in an overwhelming situation? What is it I wanted at that time? And what I wanted was to have done my job well, done it as good as I could, and to support those to my left and right. And so I focus on that as a leader. I make sure my men focused on that. And that gives everyone the confidence to go do their job in combat. Like, you get to the point you're so good, you think you're so good, you want to go test your mettle. I want to go to combat. I seriously wanted to go to combat up until the moment I was in combat. And then I was like, okay, I'm good. Never want to do this again, but I will if I have to. But I didn't want to do it. I used to go into a room and say, hey, who wants to get into a firefight with me? Anybody raise their hand, I'd pick the people that didn't, because they probably had already been in one before and they weren't as motivated to go get shot in the face. So the realities of combat need to be there as well. You need to know that you, your friends, anybody, and have a plan for it, whether it's just a mental plan of how you're going to act or what you're going to do. Because if something ever happens in your life without a plan, it's kind of chaos and you're kind of figuring out what at the time. And if that moment is combat and I didn't have a plan for what I would do or what I would do with my emotions during that time, it was chaotic. And that moment or minutes of chaos could be the end of you and your friends. So
yeah,
always have that plan of how you're going to react and what you're going to do when something happens.
Yes, great. And specifically for leaders, someone's listening to this podcast, Tom, and he may not even be in the military at this point. He's going to be a combat leader one day, and he's going to make a decision that ends up resulting in the death or serious injury of one or more of his teammates. But the mission continues, and then midway through a firefight or an engagement or whatever. What's your best advice for the combat leader, the inexperienced combat leader that suddenly finds himself with casualties, maybe even as a result of his, hey, go left instead of go right? What do you tell that guy?
I would tell that person to always go into every situation as trained as you possibly can be. Your leaders, if they take you and you're new and they throw you into a situation and they didn't train you, it's on them. It's on you as a person to get as trained as possible as you can as well, not to sit back and wait on your leaders. Well, my leaders didn't tell me to do it, so I didn't do it. You know what you need to do your job. You've been given a job. You've been trained on how to do it. You know what your men's jobs are. You know how they tie together as a leader. And if you don't, you're probably going to have those feelings if someone gets hurt or injured or killed. You're going to have those feelings of, man, I didn't do enough. And it's going to haunt you the rest of your life. What you can't stop is people getting hurt or killed. You can't stop that. That's just luck of the draw. That's the other guy's training or lack of training, or you walked into a bullet or you stepped on an ID. A lot of it is luck or bad luck, if you will. But if you fully devoted yourself to your job, you didn't slack off on the weekdays or the weekends, and you didn't, I don't feel like doing, I don't want to get a haircut, I don't want to work out, and now you can't run that distance you need to run in combat, and you're dragging people down, or you didn't force your people to train to be better, and then you're going to have those emotions when people get hurt or injured. You're going to start thinking, I should have, and then you have the regret or the survivor's guilt. I was around a group of such highly trained people that, I really didn't even have to lead half the time. They know what they're doing. That was one of the easiest leadership jobs in my career, was leading leaders. I just happened to, I'm the blame guy now. If something goes wrong, you got to go to somebody. So that was me. So all I did was give everyone the ability to train as hard as they could, make sure they had the money, the supplies and the support and the locations to do that training all the time. And so when they do go to combat and something bad happens, it's not their fault, but it's easier to get past it if they had everything they needed to do their job to the best of their abilities. It's easier to look back and say, man, I did my best. Something bad still happened versus, wow, I kind of screwed off for 6 months, went to combat, and I got 3 people killed. There's a big barrier there that's hard to break through after the battle, if you will. And that's what weighs a lot of people down, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'll add this. This was coming from a World War II Marine I was talking to. This is late 70s. I was talking to this guy, the Iwo Jima, enlisted Marine, then became an officer in Korea and Vietnam. And he told me, he said, Etor, listen, if you lead in combat and you have any serious opposition, some of your guys are going to get hit. And when you see some of your men get hit and killed, you can't freeze at that moment. Because everybody's looking at you for direction. If you freeze, there's going to be a hell of a lot more bodies real quick. So you got to keep going. The wounded will get taken care of. The dead are already dead. You got to keep pressing forward. So I know you agree with that. And I really appreciate your words. And I think that the old guy's advice combined with yours pretty much captures it all for the young leader out there, prepping. And to your point, the question about, I wonder how, I want to go to combat. I think everybody thinks, well, nobody wants to go. I think just the opposite. I think most young men anyway, that are in the military, that are in ground combat arms, I disagree with the conventional wisdom. I think they all want to go. Until they're there. I wanted to, I know you do. Everybody wants to check that box and say, hey, I've been under fire and I reacted well. Not necessarily heroically, but I performed well.
Right.
The problem is 10 minutes into it, you've checked that box, but the op's not over, but relative to wanting to go, for you young guys out there listening to this, I think you agree, Tom. I don't think you're nuts for wanting to go test yourself in that way. Being prepared and ready mentally and physically and skills-wise is why we're talking to guys like Tom. Any thoughts, Tom?
No, I think that people need to learn that they have to be vulnerable. People don't like that word vulnerable, and they don't like vulnerability because it sounds like you're losing and you're giving up. But you can't go out the gate, you can't go out the wire without making yourself vulnerable. So to be courageous, you have to be vulnerable. Yeah. If you don't put yourself in a position of vulnerability, then you're really not being courageous. And a lot of the young guys need to not think about heroics. What heroic thing will I do? What can I do? Everybody wants to be the head of the parade and do something. And I want a Medal of Honor. No, you don't. You don't want what it takes to get a Medal of Honor. You don't want what it takes to get a lot of awards, but just do your job. You're trained to do your job, and that job that you're trained to do will save the person to your right, to your left, and save yourself, and it'll help you do your missions right. Just focus on knowing your job well. Heroics come when they have to. Don't worry about the heroics and how you're going to act. Just, like you said, worry about doing your job well, because that's what you're paid and trained to do, and that's what you're needed to do in combat. Well, it's what you're needed to do anywhere, really, is do your job and do it well.
Absolutely. I know that during the Battle of Mogadishu and then a whole bunch of other stuff you participated in, you saw no shortage of people that had, what we call mental toughness, the warrior spirit, the refuse to lose mentality. I mean, I know you've seen guys that are alive and their unit is alive or experienced less casualties just because that one guy just was so tough mentally, it bled over to everybody. And no one wanted to disappoint that guy. And you looked at him and said, well, if he's still hanging in there, I can too. What do you think about that mentality, the warrior spirit, the mental toughness? How important is it to a combat leader? And can it be developed, or is it something you're born with? You either have it or you don't.
I think it's developed. I think most of what we're born with is instinctual, and breathe, eat, things like that. And everything else from the time of such a young age, we're taught everything else. We're taught, or we've observed it. We've not necessarily taught that. We've observed it as well. And people don't remember what you tell them. They remember how you make them feel anyway. So most of what we do is observed. And then we go into the part of our life where we're doing training. We're learning. We're in school. We're learning new things. It seems a little tougher because it's not hands-on. And then we go back in. And where was I going with that question? That question just slipped out. What was the main beat of that question?
We were talking about mental toughness, the warrior spirit, and can combat leaders develop it? Is it nature or nurture?
Yeah, I think it's a little of a nature, a lot of nurturing. I think, like I said, how we're raised and how we're grown up, what we're taught by our parents and then our friends, and then what we kind of led into. I stumbled into the military. I had no idea I was going to end up in the military until the day I joined. And it was about a 1 hour block of time that I decided I wasn't going to ever go to the military to I'm in the military already. It was just one of those exciting things. And I think that the mental toughness comes from your training and what you're exposed to. I was going to join the military and be a medic. I mean, I might not had mental toughness instilled in me combat-wise for a while as a medic. Then again, maybe I could have. There's other jobs I could have picked in the military. I chose combat engineer as a young testosterone-filled kid. When I finally went to the recruiters, he was like, oh, you could build stuff, blow stuff up. And I'm thinking, that's cool, right? It sounded cool at the time for a guy. So I joined that with the full intention of getting out in 4 years and going to college. I mean, I had no career path.
Yeah.
And the things that I saw while I was in my first 3 years in French commando school and German Ranger school and, 40-mile hike in Switzerland, things like that, and platoon confidence training and bad tolls, all those things gave me a taste of a more exciting lifestyle. So even then, it was just more exciting for me. It wasn't, I'm going to go to combat. It was just something fun and exciting to do. And I didn't even know I was learning those skills. And then, I go to Green Beret and I go to selection for that. And you meet different people that come from different, maybe the Rangers or the infantry. And I started learning that mindset, that thought process. And, what's funny is what we do now is we try to break down that thought process and that mindset of what kind of wraps us tight in the military. Yeah. But having that warrior mindset and that aggressiveness, you have to have it for combat. And you have to develop it. Lots of boxing and fighting and just hands-on in the CQB house with people of things that are uncomfortable, things you don't really want to do. And you get past that and you learn that warrior mindset of aggressiveness and attacking and never stopping until it's done versus, a sporting event where you box until, okay, stop, you win. No, this is the mindset of going to the final moment and going all in. And that is what sustains you. I think it's definitely learned. It's observed and learned. And then you have to test yourself and then you get the confidence and then you go out and you just like anything else, you get better at it. And then you need to watch the bravado part of it. The I'm a warrior. I'm gonna tattoo my body. I'm gonna drink and grow my operator beard and talk trash. With it comes a lot of responsibility. With the ability to play God comes a lot of responsibility that I don't think is considered in a lot of people. Taking a life will affect you, so you have to be prepared for that. And I think that's one thing that is missing in that warrior mindset of how to take a life and how to be dynamic and how to be aggressive and tough and not quit. okay, what happens after you successfully complete your mission of taking a life or few, that's slowly going to creep back up on you. And I think that's one thing that we are lacking in training of is how to deal with the outcome of your training, if you will.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the podcast. I wanted to touch on physical conditioning with, after the mental toughness, the training and all of that. Again, Garrison tends to, focus on certain, regular PT events and things like that. And, people say, well, you get the old guys that say, well, I did PT in combat, but I maintain that physical fitness in the rear sets you up for able to endure from a health and fitness perspective, an endurance perspective in Iraq where it's 120 degrees, you've lost 35 pounds. What are your thoughts on peacetime garrison PT vice what's really important and what can people do to really prepare physically for combat?
I think being in shape is key for everything, for health, for stress. The military wants you in shape because they're paying your medical bills. So if you're not in shape, they're paying for all the negative things that come with being out of shape and being unhealthy and unfit. Nutrition goes a lot with it. And I think it rolls into, if you go to combat, you're not going to have a train up period, right? You're not going to, all right, we're going to combat in 6 months or a year, and it takes a while to get into shape. So I think you have to maintain physical fitness. I think you should always, I think what the military does is your standard daily physical fitness to wake you up, get your blood flowing, and hopefully keep you from gaining too much weight and being too out of shape. I think different units do different levels of PT. The more that you're going to go into combat, those units tend to do more PT because it helps a lot with stress. You need to be physically fit. You need to be able to carry that weight on you. And just the stress of being there is a weight itself. And so the more physically fit you are, the less chances you are of breaking down, having heart attacks, strokes, fits, things like that, or pulling muscles, you making sure you're always stretched and limber and ready to go. We did PT in combat. I did PT every day when I was in combat. Sometimes I did combat after doing a 5-6 mile run and working out, and I was tired. But it dealt with the stress, and everybody will tell you, everybody can admit whether they want to or not, the hardest part is starting. I'll work out tomorrow. I'll start my workout tomorrow. I'll start my diet tomorrow. Tomorrow's that day that hardly ever comes unless you just stop negotiating and start. So I think the PT in garrison is key. I think PT in combat is also important. I think I've heard it from people. I've been to combat. I don't do PT tests anymore. Why not? Why don't you have to be in shape anymore? Right? Being in shape is for the job we're doing, regardless, is important. Whether you're in combat or not, your health is important, right? Everything you put in your stomach goes to your brain, goes to your body. And if you're not feeding it properly and you're not exercising, we all know what happens with that. So I think it's like, Uncle Sam's being mom and dad and telling you, look, I'm paying the bills, right? So I'm going to tell you how to stay a little bit healthier so I don't get it on the other end of your unhealthy lifestyle.
Right. Let's move to, let's move to training for combat. Knowing what you know now, what issues or areas would you have devoted more time during your preparation for combat as an individual and then maybe as a unit? In hindsight, what are the things you thought were going to be really important to you, and when you got there, they were less important or irrelevant? And then did anything surprise you? So you have a chance to talk to the future combat leaders. Anything you'd like to tell them from experience where maybe you were wrong or not as right as you wanted to be going forward?
I was wrong about people looking tough, people being fit and acting like an animal. I equated that with being ready, right? I equated that with mental toughness, when really that's physical toughness, that's confidence in doing your job, but mental toughness is the ability to handle it afterwards. I think we should have focused more on, and I would love to see people focus more on the mental health aspect of combat. People don't like that word. You hear mental health, you think something's wrong. You need to fix it. Somebody's crazy. But really, when I say mental health, I mean like physical health, mental health. We work on our bodies. We watch what we eat. We exercise all the time. But why don't we work on our mental health as well? What are you going to do when somebody gets shot? What are you going to do when somebody gets killed? What are you going to do when you're under so much stress and pressure and you have to make a decision of 5 people getting injured or 1 person getting killed, and how to work past and through those issues. And we don't talk about that, and we don't talk about it when we get out either. And that is causing a lot of problems upon ETS or retirement with people and veterans, are how to deal with all of that trauma that they caused, created, or witnessed over time. And I wish we'd have done that more up front. It would be easier. We're doing it now. We're trying to do it now, but I wish the government would have implemented a plan before and looked at mental health as something that needed to be honed and sharpened as well as your physical fitness. Because I want somebody completely healthy. I don't want somebody that's suffering from emotional loss of a friend or friends or survivor's guilt, and then I got to take them and go to war again, right? He's not all there with me, yet he's not broken. He just needs a little bit more training, a little bit more assistance, just like, he knocked his sights off on his weapon. Okay, well, we got to go back down the range and zero it again and get it ready, get it right on track. But I think we look at it like something negative that we don't want to address. And I think it makes people stronger.
Yeah, I want to move right from that right into, let's talk about casualties, the effects of casualties, both friendly, and then the topic most people don't talk about is the effect of seeing enemy casualties, or God forbid, non-combatants, civilians that get inadvertently killed. Again, people are macho and they want to go out there and crush the enemy and all that, but I maintain that if you're not prepared to see what can happen to some of your buddies, you're going to hesitate a bit. It's going to, if the thought of it doesn't occur to you that it can happen, when it does happen, it's just completely shocking to people. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you've seen. How did casualties, both friendly and enemy, affect new, lesser experienced soldiers in combat, even operators? I mean, how going forward, what would you tell guys to, hey, if this is going to happen, so expect this and you need to react this way or be prepared for this? It goes right along with what you're saying mentally, Yeah,
I've seen all three. I've seen my first was just my own friends getting shot around me. And not really knowing what was going on. And we all drove through. I remember when I first witnessed it, I looked over, I see my friend shooting up the street. I look back, I shoot up the street, I look back, and there's 2 people dragging him away. It was that quick. My mind is telling me, oh, he's injured, he'll be okay. I found out later he was shot in the face, he was dead. But you stare at it like, whoa, we're no longer invincible. That's weird. I told myself we were invincible. We trained so hard. How can we get injured or killed? And then it comes along and then you have that, I want to go home. I'm done, right? Battle's over. It's not over, right? So I ended up staying there another 15, 16 hours of, I don't have time to think about this. I can't even think about this. And to the point of in the middle of the night, asking my team leader, hey, are they going to make it? Is the convoy going to make it to us? And he's like, I hope so. I mean, that's all he could say was, I hope so. And that was early on. And I saw people that I thought were animals who lost their best friend sitting in the corner in shock and disbelief. And I saw people who were brand new, and I was brand new myself, just running around, just doing their job, just doing what you need to do. And then other new people who would sit down and kind of, you could tell that they were in awe and they didn't understand why we were still here, why we weren't out of this position. When normally we go in and we go out, we go in and we go out. It was the first time for me too. And we left our night vision behind. We left food and water. Big lesson learned. But you don't know. You don't know. And all you can do is rely on your muscle memory and your training. And I've seen some guys with serious muscle memory and training, loss of close friends freeze up for a while. And that's because they didn't consider it first. They didn't have a mental plan of, if one of my friends dies, I'll grieve later. I mean, you have to have a plan for everything before you execute.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, Tom, that mental plan. So you're right on it. And I'd ask you to keep going.
Yeah, anything you do in life that you want to do well, you think through it, you plan it out, whether it's just in your head or not, or on paper, and you plan it out. And then you start to execute it. And then anything along the way, you've kind of, those who want to power through something better than others will have multiple plans. PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Here's my primary plan. We know that won't last. We know that won't last because the enemy has a say. So we got to switch to our alternate plan. Whenever that shifts, we switch to the alternate without a beat, right? Everybody knows what to do. And then when that one fails, and it will, you go to contingency. When that fails, you go to emergency. Hopefully you never make it to that emergency point, right? But you have a plan along the way of where I'm going to fall back to or how I'm going to shift when something happens. And you'll never think of everything, but the more experience you have, I think the better leader you are because you've seen more things. But if you can impart that upon the young, I say, because as we talk to rooms of 500 SF soldiers, I'm like, I know none of you have seen combat and you're all sitting there thinking this old guy doesn't know what he's talking about and can't wait to get me out of the room so you can go party and shoot your weapons. I go, but you'll be in that position one day. And at least you'll remember having this talk. It'll be in your head somewhere. And hopefully that'll spark a memory for you to push past a really horrible moment in your life. But if you don't lay it out, you don't at least think about what will I do? Say Jimmy gets killed right next to me. Best friend on the team or something. What happens? He gets shot in the most horrific way. I envision myself of what I would do, and it's always right back to where'd you get shot from? How can I stop whatever caused this from happening to anyone else? And then tell yourself that you'll grieve later. You don't have time to grieve. You don't have time to stop because it's not just you anymore. It's a team thing, or bigger.
How about the effects of seeing enemy dead and wounded and civilians, non-combatants?
Yeah, we can play that off for a little bit. We've had bad names for the enemy since we started going to war with people. It's just to dehumanize them, to make it easier to kill another human being, because that's what they are, another human being. Speak a different language. They might look a little different. They live in another part of the world, but we're exactly the same. I mean, they grew up believing what they believe in, just like we grew up believing what we believe in, and they're just as adamant as we are about it. So, we're lucky we have better weapons and more people and more equipment. We throw it around the world, and we're generally the good guys, right? But I think that's what everybody tells themselves. So you have to keep that in mind. That enemy's going to fight to the death, just like you would fight. And when you see that person, it's no longer the enemy. It's a body laying there. It's a lifeless body, and you did that. And you rub it off the time. I got you. At least you didn't kill one of my friends. And it's easy at the time, but it always comes back to you. That's a human being. That's a human's life that you took, and you weren't raised to be that way. You weren't taught that that's okay. So the moral injury that comes with doing your job legally is still there. You still have that inner feeling of how I was raised and what I was taught was right or wrong, and my morals, and taking a life I was taught was wrong. I did it as part of my job, making it okay, but still what you were born with and taught with most of your life is going to come back and haunt you, and you're going to think about that life that you took. And so be prepared to address it. I've not seen people break down for the enemy. I've seen people break down for non-combatants that get caught in the middle. And I've had that happen a couple of times in some of my missions. And it's not good. It's not good to see the reaction of a mother and a child when you drag their dead father and husband into their driveway of their own home. And then they come out and stumble on, and you're like, oh, and they're freaking out. I mean, those are emotions you'll never forget. Those are sounds that you'll never forget. And it's all attached to the loss of a human life.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Time is pretty much up, Tom, and I really appreciate you sharing these experiences. They were hard. They were gained in the school of hard knocks for sure. And I'd like to thank you, obviously, for your years of service to our country. You certainly paid a price. What are you doing these days? I'd like you to tell the audience. Obviously, I read your book. I thought it was great. I encourage everybody to get it. Tom's best-selling book, All Secure. And I know you and Jen are doing other good stuff. So let's hear it. What are you doing?
Yeah, so we decided to take everything that we've learned from my struggles after getting out of the military and through my wife working with me for several years after getting out of the military, filming special operations. She ran into so many people that needed the same kind of help that I needed, that she got me, that we decided to start a nonprofit, All Secure Foundation, to help special operations, combat warriors and their families recover from the traumas of war, the things they've seen, the life at home that they live after war, the ones that we don't like to talk about, the aggressive behavior, the feelings that we have that go along with it, the loss of tribe, So we try to bring that reintegration back into society, reintegration back into the relationship. And we teach them ways to do that with our therapists and through our own experiences. Also, I wrote a book, and writing the book wasn't to write it about me. It was to write it to get people to see that they can ask for help and where to go ask for help and the different things that I did to get help. And it explained a lot of what we just talked about, different things that I went through in the military, post-service, and the mistakes I made along the way. And we wanted to be the first on the dance floor because we know that that's leadership, right? When there's an empty dance floor and there's music playing and somebody's waiting on that first person to get out there and be the leader and show everybody it's okay to dance. So we threw all of our dirty laundry out there and talked about how we got through it in the book and during our talks and in our retreats, in hopes that other people would say, oh, there's some people on the dance floor. I guess it's okay to get out on the dance floor. And it's happened. So more and more people are coming together saying, yeah, I feel the same way. I've gone through the same things, and they're getting help in the same way. So my wife's currently writing a book for the spouses of the same, kind of like my book was, here's what happened to us and here's how I got out of it. My wife's the same thing. Here's the other part of the story. And here's a continuation of what we did. Because we just get so many phone calls and messages of, the aggression. How do I manage it? I want to stay with my wife, but, I cause all these issues, and it's all related to combat and the emotions associated with it. So we're still fighting that I'm tough sentiment. I don't need therapy sentiment. I'm a warrior sentiment, and I tell people, look, you had hate and anger and aggression, and that was all great and it kept you alive, but say thanks. You don't need it anymore out here as much as you needed it in the military. You lived in the world of probability then. Something bad probably will happen. Now you live in the world of possibility. Possibly something bad could happen. I don't really need my skills honed to that level because I need to focus on other things in my life now versus my constant training. I'm focusing on my family, myself, what I'm doing now, and helping people get past that. So that's our new mission. That's what we do, is try to get people to open up and ask for help and get the help they need. And it's working out pretty well.
What websites, Tom? Where can they find? Where can we'll learn more about it?
Yeah, it's allsecurefoundation.org is our website. My wife has Virago, which is also through allsecurefoundation.org. You can get my book there. You'll be able to get her book there. You can find a 6-week mind and body reset that we have on there for free that helps you physically and mentally, or a 6-week kind of reboot to get your body going again. And we have marriage retreats. And so you can find us on Instagram at All Secure, on Facebook at All Secure Foundation, and then you can see us on Twitter at All Secure Vets.
Nice. Tom, I can't thank you enough. This is great. It's exactly how I hoped the episode would turn out. I know the young folks are going to really enjoy listening to it. And I really hope you come back again someday for another podcast. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I really appreciate you having me on it. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you so much, Tom.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.